Good evening to all. Welcome. I call on our committee member Stephanie to start the evening with an invocation and peace message. Stephanie.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we start, I would like us to take a moment to thank God for another day. May we be grateful each day for the opportunities that we have, and especially for our health during these challenging times. May we be grateful that even amidst the chaos, we still have the chance to connect with each other and learn from each other. May we be grateful for all that we have and use our resources to foster peace amongst our fellows. At last, I would like to leave you with these words from Martin Luther King Jr., which says, "Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together in peace, and thereby transform this life, this pending cosmic elegy, into a creative psalm of brotherhood. If this is to be achieved, man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such method is love." Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the session. I will leave you now with Brian, who is going to do the four-way test.
Good evening, fellow Rotarians, and welcome. Please join me with the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Please enjoy this session.
Thank you, Brian. DG Lyle, feature speaker Patricia Shafer of NewGen PeaceBuilders, and your team, all our past district governors who have joined us, fellow Rotarians, interactors, Rotaractors, guests, thank you for supporting the Peace Committee's second session on the topic of building a culture of peace, putting principles of positive peace and young people at the center of a global dream. Former UN Secretary General and High Representative of the UN, Anwar Chowdhury, insightfully said that the most significant way of promoting a culture of peace is through peace education, something that needs to be accepted in all parts of the world. Such education would focus on human rights, gender equality, disarmament, social and economic justice, nonviolence, sustainable development, and international law. For more than 100 years, Rotary International has been a voice, supporter, and innovator in peace initiatives, including peace education. But what does this look like in action at the community level? Can every Rotarian, Rotaractor, and interactor become an effective convener and connector for peace? What are the tangible ways Rotarians in District 7030 can contribute to peace as an area of focus? Our district intends to engage in the training of a total of 350 interactors, Rotaractors, Rotarians, and civic leaders in peace education via NewGen PeaceBuilders, and we are currently seeking to source funding for the proposed training, which, if we are successful, would take place early next year. In this dynamic and interactive presentation this afternoon, Patricia Shafer will share her perspective gained from 8 years of leading the nonprofit NewGen PeaceBuilders and her role as a Rotary Peace Fellow and Rotary Positive Peace Activator. But before I hand over to Patricia, I want to invite our District Governor, Lyle Chase of St. Lucia, who we all know, to bring greetings to us. DG Lyle is a champion for peace, and our committee is grateful for his support, guidance, and leadership. DG Lyle, I call on you to bring us greetings.
Thank you so much, Debs, and this wonderful peace committee that we have assembled. You guys, having seen the video, you now know why I am so delighted to have this team of peace champions heading up District 7030. welcome, Patricia. Welcome once again, you and your team. And I've seen a number of past district governors, David, Leslie, I see Milton. I don't see any others, so forgive me if I don't call any other names, but if you're there, welcome. And I'm really I'm excited by this program we have on today. I've been trying to recruit the next Peace Builder Club, and I'm also trying both Rotaract and Rotary. So I've been hard at work today and yesterday, and I hope that we are just going to relax and enjoy the session. Thank you very much. I don't want to say very much because I don't need to. This team is just so awesome. They're going to say it all. So thank you, and please go ahead, Debs, and take it away.
I now invite Christine to formally introduce Patricia.
Thank you, Debbie. Good evening, everyone. So it's an honor and a pleasure for me to welcome and to present Patricia Shafer, our speaker today. She is Executive Director of NewGen PeaceBuilder, an award-winning peace education, training and mentoring program that puts young people ages 15 to 24 at the center of community-focused peace building. Patricia Shafer has an impressive background. Patricia is Senior Fellow for Peace Education at the Alliance for Peace Building, Rotary Peace Fellow, Rotary Positive Peace Activator, and Global Peace Ambassador for Rotary Strategic Partner Institute for Economics and Peace. In addition to her official peacebuilding work, Patricia is Chief Catalyst and Executive Director of international nonprofit Mothering Across Continents, through which education projects are managed in several countries in East Africa. Since 2014, NGP programs have been completed or are being initiated in 8 states in the US and 10 countries with support from Rotary clubs, districts, and global grants and recognition from the Rotary Action Group for Peace. NGP participants have created peace projects addressing education inequity, gun violence, homelessness, hunger, pollution, climate change, political polarization, and other pressing social and economic issues. The organization was nominated by the government of South Sudan for the inaugural UNESCO Prize for Girls and Women's Literacy. Previously, Patricia held senior positions in change management and communication in 2 global Fortune 100 companies. She holds an MSc in Consulting and Coaching for Change, a joint venture of Oxford University, UK and HEC France, an MBA, Northwestern University Kellogg Graduate School of Management, and MA Journalism from the Ohio State University. I told you she has an impressive background, and I'm very honored to welcome today Patricia Shafer. Please, Patricia.
Well, hello everyone, and I have to say that I believe magic occurs in 3s. You know, some people have magic numbers. One of my magic numbers is 3. And I was thinking, as you were opening the session tonight, that there's something that always impresses me about District 7030, and especially your efforts around peace. It's that you're aspirational, you're inspirational, and you're very intentional. I think it shows up in the music, it shows up in your messages, it shows up in the ways you use words and language about peace. What I didn't know is maybe the 4th part, and the 4th part is the surprise. I didn't know I would have the opportunity to connect virtually with a Rotary Peace Fellow in your district tonight and have an introduction come in that way. And that is 3 great things and a super surprise. So I'm really, really glad to be here with you. Under the heading of Magic Happens in Threes for me, this is sort of a 3 in terms of being able to speak to you tonight. I was able to listen into a District 7030, perhaps District Assembly, I'm not sure. Part of that one time, I was able to hear a presentation by Summer Lewis, who is another Rotary Peace Fellow who I work closely with, when she spoke to District 7030. And now tonight, it's my chance to speak with you, and it's a tremendous opportunity. I've had so many interesting conversations with your Peace Committee and or Debbie Rupchen directly, or Lyle, over the course of the last few months. And I hope, in terms of the really good work that you're already doing, I can add some insights tonight about what my own journey has looked like in terms of being a Rotary Peace Fellow and a Rotary Positive Peace Activator, how that's led to a program that we think of as one piece of fulfilling a global dream around putting young people at the center of peace building. And I really look forward to the questions tonight so that we can have a dialogue. I know it's always a polite thing to say that you appreciate having an opportunity to be with a group of people, or speak with a group of people, or dialogue with a group of people. But I really want you to know, with absolute sincerity, I often say when I'm asked the question, what can be a better, stronger connection between Rotarians and Rotaractors, or Rotarians and Interactors, particularly around peace? I always say, or often say, you should really look at kind of what's going on in District 7030 that I'm aware of, and I realize I don't know everything, I don't know all that you're up to, but look at the energy that's down there. Look at the ways that they're being so intentional and outspoken and purposeful around peace building, and look at the ways where, at least I've been lucky enough to see these intentional intersections between Rotarians, Rotaractors, Interactors, and the community. So later on in the presentation, I'm really going to try and underline why, in many ways, I think you are and have the potential to be an even stronger model around how to actually put peace in action within zones 33, 34, and show others how it can be done. So thank you for the honor of being able to kind of begin to team up with you. I want to call out a little bit of who's on the screen there. There are so many photos there. And in speaking to you tonight, really say that in our conversation together, this makes you, this makes me part of, you and I together, part of a network, a growing network of young peace builders with Rotary as a platform and support to make it happen. As you heard, I'm Executive Director of NewGen PeaceBuilders. I'm also Senior Fellow for Peace Education at the Alliance for Peace Building, Rotary Positive Peace Activator, a Global Peace Ambassador for Rotary Strategic Partner, the Institute for Economics and Peace. But all that does is give me a chance to meet the most interesting people who are really bringing peace building alive at the local level, and doing it by putting young people at the center. So just quickly, up in the left corner of your screen, that's Alfredo Fairbarn. He is a past district governor in Argentina. When I began to work with him, he was a past district governor in a district that was about a third of Argentina. Now it's literally physically half of the entire country. And he was so committed to peace building and training young peace builders that he actually led the initiation of a global grant to bring NewGen PeaceBuilders to Argentina. And we continue to build on that work. And so you can see Rotarians and others, including me, off in that corner working together. Let's see, down here, bottom left, the fellow on the right who's looking down at a piece of paper, that's Iad Hemdat. He was a NewGen peace builder at the university level in Bridgewater College in the United States, but he's Palestinian. He is trained, he's gone home to Palestine, and he's bringing NewGen peace builders there. The two people next to them, that woman on the left has been held several important positions with Rotary in Ethiopia. She's also a very trained peace builder herself. She's Ethiopian, but when she was in Rwanda, her name is Ganet Christos. When she was in Rwanda, she was at the center with the United Nations of helping support what are known as the Gachacha circles. So circles of healing and unity that occurred after the genocide in Rwanda. So around, you know, the screen with all these photos, these are all people in different places that are undertaking peace building and learning how to be peace builders and practicing peace builders by beginning to use a set of tools and frameworks that allow them to put peace in action in a disciplined way. I guess one other thing I really want to acknowledge in you with District 7030 is you already are using some of the language and tools that are so important to peace building, especially peace building as articulated and practiced by Rotary. I always listen very carefully when I hear you say negative and positive peace, structural violence, cultural violence, direct violence. These are notions that as we're all learning to be peace builders over the entire course of our lives, this is language and tools that you're already a step ahead of many folks. So I really appreciate that you're already in that space. The one other thing I would say is I heard you speak of being connectors and conveners, and that really is a great opportunity for Rotary in local communities. And the thing that can help Rotarians, Rotaractors, Interactors be the most effective conveners and connectors they can be is to have good content, you know, good knowledge, understanding of frameworks and tools of peace building, understanding of how to use data to make really good decisions about what constitute quality peace projects that make a difference in the community and move the needle forward, as they say. So since I love threes, for the rest of the presentation, let's think in terms of being connectors, being conveners, and what content do we have at our disposal that can help us do that really, really well. All right. So I'd like I would appreciate it if everybody for a moment would just close your eyes. Just close your eyes for a second. And I can see who, you know, can, is. And here's what I'd like you to think about just for a moment. Who would be your peace builder role model? It can be anybody, you know, alive or passed away, close to you, not close to you, famous, not famous. Who would be your peace builder role model? Okay, you have that image? Everybody have your image? All right. So one of the things I've noticed with NewGen Peace Builders is over the time that we've been doing it, there are certain figures that show up over and over and over again, and they're global figures. Gandhi is one, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is another, Mother Teresa is another. There's a new set of peace builders that, you know, we start to hear about more and more often. Quite often, Malala is suggested. If you're in the United States, people talk about young Emma Gonzalez, who led a whole initiative around gun violence in the United States. And I often hear that my father was one of the greatest peace builders I've known. My mother, my grandmother, my auntie. And so I often hear a mix of either famous figures and icons, singular individuals, or people who are very close to us, and more emerging figures who are leading sort of movements led by young people. But I always think it's important to think about who is your peace builder role model, because it says a lot about the qualities and traits and values that are important to you when you think about who constitutes a peace builder. And so I'd like to take a moment to actually let you know a little bit about how I came to think about my peace builder role models. So for me, Gweng Marial is one of my peace builder role models. So you heard in the introduction that I was nominated by the government of South Sudan for a UNESCO Prize for Girls and Women's Literacy, because I do a lot of work in East Africa, primarily helping build schools, train teachers, develop school systems, and so on. And it so happens that a lot of this school building work that I do is in places that we often associate with extreme conflict. One of those places is South Sudan. South Sudan is in East Africa. It is the newest country in the world. It has existed for about 9 years as an independent country. And it is a country that in many ways is born of conflict. There has been civil war in South Sudan in one way or another for almost uninterrupted for 50 years. And currently, there's actually a unity government in place. They're trying to hold peace agreements that they set several years ago in place, but I've worked there for about 10 years. And working in South Sudan for 10 years means when you're working on education, your education projects could easily be disrupted by an outbreak of civil war, a new round of famine that's related to an outbreak of civil war. Right now, the situation in South Sudan is quite dire because there are about 10 million people in the country, and there are only 4 ventilators in the country. And COVID-19 has touched South Sudan just like so many places. We've all been touched. But what you see in a place like South Sudan is when the systems and structures are so weak in and of themselves, then when COVID-19 rears its ugly head, as they say, it is so disruptive. Just the level of disruption around schools being able to open or not, it's all a question mark now. Food prices have skyrocketed. Borders have been closed. Now, these are not unfamiliar ideas to many of us. We've all experienced some of these challenges because of COVID-19. But Gwang Marial is one of my peace builder role models because he is a teacher in South Sudan who was the first teacher in his state that was actually able to go and get a basic diploma in teaching and take it back to his school and be a headmaster equipped with those skills. To do that, he had to leave his family for 1.5 years. He had a son who was born while he was away at school. And technically, by culture, when your child is born and you are not there as the father, the child cannot be named until you return. And so he made all sorts of sacrifices to actually go and become a teacher so he could go back and make a difference, not only in his community, but in his state. Now, making a difference as a teacher in his state means 90% of the adults in his state can't read. 70% of the people in South Sudan in general can't read. On any given day, the challenges he and his students will face at school could be no water in the well, an outbreak of malaria, or being completely disrupted and having to scatter to the bush, as they say, because there's new fighting that's broken out. We actually have to badge the students so that the military will not think that an older student, a teenage boy, is actually eligible for the military or being sort of drafted into the military or a militia. So Gwang is one of my peace builder role models because with nothing and all of the challenges in the world, he actually carries on. Okay, sorry, had a family moment. Okay, so how I became a Rotary Peace Fellow is related to Gwang and South Sudan, because I was chosen to be a Rotary Peace Fellow because of my experiences in East Africa, working on education and its connection with conflict. But while I was there, some Rotarians up in the northeastern part of the United States, New England, said, what? Wait. Rotary is an enormous platform of 1.2 million people. Rotary has all of these amazing connections with young people through Rotaract and Interact and Rotary Youth Exchange and various forms of leadership development programs around the world. How is it there's not an education program that can be available, supported by Rotary, available to young people, and it can be scaled and repeated and replicated around the world? It seems that should be an objective for us. And they raised that issue and opportunity in 2012, 2013, when a past president of Rotary set peace through service as his mission. It was President Tanaka. So I was approached to try and structure that program of education that could be taken almost anywhere in the world, but of course recognize that there are variations. Context is important. You can't take the same program and have everybody use it. That would be not respectful of language and culture and circumstances and so on. So the question was, could you do that, but in a hybridized kind of way? So that learning a certain set of frameworks and tools at the community level as young people, almost like Rotary Peace Fellows, could be relevant in Trinidad Tobago, it could be relevant in Tennessee, it could be relevant in India, it could be relevant in Serbia. And so that's the journey we began. Now, I have to be honest, at the time I began that journey, I myself was a bit skeptical. You know, there was no evidence, no proof that something like this could be done. But when we really started to look at the numbers, we said, wouldn't that be irresponsible if we didn't try? Because why? 3 billion people on this planet are under the age of 30. 180 million people on this planet are between, 1.8 billion people on the planet are between the ages of 15 and 24. There's an old rule that says if you can get to 10% or increasingly 5% of a population and shift their capacities, then you can shift everything. So if you do the math, that means somewhere around the world, we just need to get to 90 million people between the ages of 15 and 24. Now to you, that might sound like a giant number. To me, when you think about being able to replicate and systematize something, it's actually a very doable number. If all you have to do is get to 90 million people on a planet of 7 billion people. So that became really the idea for NewGen PeaceBuilders. Now, what often surprises people, I don't think it would surprise you in District 7030 because you're already speaking in these terms, is we don't talk about peace building as just stopping the bad, negative violence. We talk about peace building as creating the good, creating conditions of well-being for all, doing what you referred to at the beginning of the presentation as positive peace building. And for you, it might seem obvious. I find that for me, when I speak to various groups, I really have to emphasize that because there can easily, we're trained to think that peace building means stopping the bad, stopping the violent. We're not trained to think that we have the capacities to develop peace approaches and peace projects that can shift things, shift structure, shift culture. And we're trained to think that peace builders are big icons, not, you know, just all of us at the community level. And so I always make a point to say, oh, well, not only is the mission here to get equip young people and empower and appreciate young people as leaders around peace building, it's to recognize that peace building means working on dignity, prosperity, justice, and that young people are not only equipped to do it, they're fully aware of the issues. And in some ways, you know, can move at a much faster pace than institutions that have been around for a long time. And in fact, it's undeniable that many of the social movements that have occurred over, say, the last 50, 60, 100 years that we admire so much were driven through the voices of young people. So these, not only Gwen Marial is a peace builder role model for me, but these young people are too, and all the young people that we're working with in NewGen PeaceBuilders. So I want to show you just quickly, I believe in threes, and I want to show you quickly what it can look like when 200 inspired young peace builders, and in this case, I'll say NewGen PeaceBuilders, get together in a consolidated fashion, in an intensive, accelerated fashion, and say, we really want to talk about the issues we care about, and we want to be specific, and we want to be specific to the issues that are important in our community. So I have a quick video for you that is about a program that took place in Houston last year. Houston, Texas.
It opened my eyes and changed me for the better. I didn't realize how complex peace really is. I've thought before about how to help build peace. Now I feel I can do something. I've already tried some of the exercises with friends and family and initiated a peace project in our club at school. Will there be more training like this for us and for more students? These are just some of the overwhelmingly positive responses that followed the Turn Empathy into Action Peace Conference and Workshop, hosted February 8th and 9th, 2019. At this event, nearly 200 students from 30+ high schools across Greater Houston participated. More than 20 Rotarians trained as conversation leaders were part of the experience. Nearly 75% of participants represented Interact, Junior Rotarians, Rotary Youth Exchange, or ROTEX. Rotary District 5890 sponsored it all and provided scholarships for students in recognition of conflict resolution and peace as a key focal area for Rotary International. And Rotary Peace Fellows Patricia Shafer and Dr. Phil Gittins from NewGen PeaceBuilders designed and facilitated. And so, what really happened? Can anything tangible come out of peacebuilding training with young people? Over 2 intensive interactive days, participants journeyed from the heart of peacebuilding to critical thinking and the head of peacebuilding to the hands of peacebuilding, including visualization and definition of 20 peace project ideas that can be incubated by the students, Rotarians, and local community leaders. They practiced empathy and connection through icebreakers and eye contact, distinguished direct, structural, and cultural violence through use of Galtung's Triangle of Violence framework, reviewed case studies of high school and university students who have already worked on team action peace projects in other places, and used hundreds of data points and a concept map exercise to understand drivers of conflict in Greater Houston that are related to 5 key areas: environment pollution, gun violence, homelessness, human trafficking, and intolerance. They learned that if they, as young people in Greater Houston, one of the largest and most diverse cities in the U.S., if they can develop action peace projects, they have the potential to inspire the rest of the country, and maybe even young people in other countries. Today's young people have unprecedented awareness of global issues. They simply need support to make peace happen.
So I really wanted you to see that. Obviously, that wouldn't be something, that format wouldn't be something we would be doing today because of the limitations and restrictions of COVID-19. But what you really heard there was, here's a community, Houston. Young people had to decide which issues mattered to them. They said gun violence, intolerance, pollution, environment, homelessness, and hunger. And there was a process for them going to work to decide, well, what can we actually do to, in an organized way, brainstorm ideas around that. When the United Nations introduced the culture of peace so many years ago, one of the things that they stressed was that education, peace education, is at the center. Peace education is at the center of actually creating a culture of peace. But also, peace in action is at the center of creating a culture of peace. Creating a culture of peace is not just about having goodwill and good spirit towards one's neighbors. It's going to work to actually shift the culture through, I would say, peace projects to create new opportunities. So, what gets in the way? If it's so obvious, and if you, like I, believe that young people can be at the center of peace building, what gets in the way? This gentleman is Graham Simpson. He led a study at the United Nations, which is often called the missing peace, P-E-A-C-E. And it was a study the UN commissioned to see what can we do to actually engage young people in peace building. What they guessed they were going to do was actually try and prevent young people from going down the wrong path, from being recruited into gangs, from being recruited into conflict. What they discovered was actually where most young people on this planet want to spend their time is in making a better planet. And we underestimate them. We position them correctly in terms of what they want to do and their potential. Here's a quick snippet we recorded in speaking to Graham Simpson.
The failure of multilateral and government systems to listen to young people, I think, concerns us primarily because, as young people themselves said, this is dominated by a series of stereotypes that shape the way in which young people are seen. That predominantly represents young people, which is such a large proportion of the population. 1.8 billion young people globally, at least a quarter of whom are living in situations in which they are exposed to ongoing conflict or risks of violence. That the failure to actually address these young people has resulted in this sort of tendency to see young people as a problem to be solved rather than as an attribute or what's referred to as a demographic dividend. And so the real sort of critical concern is how, on one hand, these stereotypes that are highly gendered, that treat young men holding guns as the problem and the threat and the risk, and that consign young women to the sort of passive status of victimhood. That these stereotypes have also fed what the study refers to as a set of policy assumptions and what we'd argue is policy panic. That basically is represented in three areas. The one is that young people who are part of a burgeoning youth population, a so-called youth bulge, present a greater risk of violence and conflict in the societies in which they represent such a big proportion of the population. There's no evidence to sustain this, and quite a lot of evidence to contradict it in many societies. The second is that young people who are migrating, who are moving across borders or who are moving from rural to urban areas, present a greater threat of violence, infiltration, increased terrorism, and again, the evidence contradicts that quite dramatically. And the third is that all young people are at risk of joining extremist armed groups. And the simple fact is that the vast majority of young people are not violent. So the most important reason for hearing young people's voice and the mandate behind the study that I did on that produced the missing piece is a recognition of the fact that the vast majority of young people are not involved in violence and that they are actually engaged in a creative, many of them in a very creative contribution to building durable peace. And the study was uniquely mandated to try and address and understand the positive contribution of young people to preventing conflict and building peace.
Okay. So first of all, to the translator, if I got too enthusiastic there for a little bit and was going a little bit too quickly, I want you to know that since I had a chance to watch the video, I'm going to slow my pace a little bit, but I'm also going to skip over a couple of slides. So what is the point? The point is we need to change our thinking to put young people at the center, equipping them as peace builders, crafting the future that they and we want to live into. But it doesn't mean we have to leave them on their own. It means it's important to have adults, systems around them who are supporting their cause. So in District 7030, where you are, I am unduly inspired, again, that you have a peace builder committee, you have peace conversations like this. You are actively trying to create peace education where there's an intersection between Rotarians, Rotaractors, Interactors, and the community. And so I'm going to scoot on to the, a slide that's about the United States. Okay, so the one thing I'm very conscious of is when in this role of bringing peace education to various places around the world supported by Rotary, if I don't address the obvious, it is a missing. That this study just came out, and this study was done by a group in the United States called ACLED. And ACLED basically mapped points of conflict in the United States. And they mapped all the protests, all of the disruption around Black Lives Matter, and they mapped all of the protests and all of this disruption around COVID-19. And if you put the two together, to deny the obvious that the US is in a state of great turmoil right now in terms of disconnects and upsets, then it would be to not state the obvious. As someone who was born and lives here, to see that we're now on a list with ACLED of the 10 top conflict spots in the world. And the 10 top conflict spots in the world, according to ACLED, include the Sahel, Yemen, and for our own reasons in a different way, the United States. So one of the things we're quite committed to, I'm quite committed to, is spreading peace education and peace building a la NewGen PeaceBuilders across the United States, but for starting, making sure that we're doing it right in our own zone, zone 3334. And so again, I'm inspired by you being in our zone. So a quick thing about who you are and where you are from that perspective. Rotary International Director Peter Kyle, who you will hear from, I think, on International Peace Day or somewhere around there, he'll speak to Rotarians in your district then, is launching something that he's calling his signature project. And his signature project, which will primarily take place in the middle of 2021 through the middle of 2022 for zones 33-34, you can see that in the dark yellow, is called Rotary plus Youth plus Peace in Action, engaging 100,000 young community peace builders. So we're already in the planning stages of that. And one of the things that we see is, if we really believe that peace building brings Rotaractors and Rotarians and interactors and community leaders together in a variety of ways, and you can do it across a geography that's rich in its diversity, but also diversity of thought and space can mean, can you really do sort of the same things across such a diverse space? Then you in District 7030, who are in many ways well on your way, can be a model for the zone. Because if I recall correctly, District 7030 is 17 countries. Somebody raise a hand if I got it right. So you're 17 countries. So if you can show your work together in your district, it's a model to how it can also be done, you know, along the East Coast in the United States. So we're very excited about the spirit that you are already showing around peace education and peace building with young people. All right, so then the obvious question is, but wait a second, this is the era of COVID-19. How do you talk about peace projects and people getting good peace projects done when we're so limited? We're restricted by social distancing and so on. So I wanted to quickly show you what happened in the spring of 2020. So recently, only a few months ago, when we had a cohort getting its NewGen Peace Builders training, and everything seemed to come to a halt because of COVID-19.
Many of the world's great peace leaders have pointed at the potential of young people. So, in February 2020, hopes ran high in greater Metro Charlotte, North Carolina, when 63 students from 20 high schools became the newest group to embark on the journey to become certified NewGen Peace Builders. To be certified, participants complete intensive learning workshops to understand drivers of conflict and peace, and then design and complete team action peace projects in at least one of these areas: awareness, service, advocacy, or philanthropy. The Greater Metro Charlotte group had just finished peace project planning in 8 teams. All systems were go. And then COVID-19 spread on a global scale. They faced this question: how can we work on peace projects with closed schools and stay-at-home restrictions? Incredibly, all 8 teams adapted, persevered, and used new virtual skills to do so. Here are highlights from 4 of the 8 projects that share one thing in common: a belief in education as an essential pathway to peace. A growing number of teenagers are expressing their fears that climate change threatens their future, and their frustrations are not taken seriously. In 2015, the United States EPA and USDA announced a 2030 goal to reduce food waste, landfill waste, and carbon emissions by 50%. The Lighter Footprints team discovered that U.S. school cafeterias serve nearly 5 billion lunches every year in ways that add to the carbon footprint. So, the team partnered with Houston-based Footprint app and California-based Edible Schoolyards to develop an e-food feature that helps students advocate for sustainable food choices and lesson plans to make available to high schools in all 50 states. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that the majority of the 20 fastest growing occupations between 2018 and 2028 will require completion of challenging science, technology, engineering, and math classes, or STEM. The All In for STEM team members realized that nearly all of them have a passion for STEM in common. They researched differences across race and ethnicity in who chooses STEM classes and careers, and learned that the earlier children experience engaging activities, the better. Children in low-income minority schools often miss out on these experiences. The team partnered with Heal Charlotte, a community-building nonprofit started in 2016 after protests in the city turned violent, with racial inequity at the core of the conflict. Team members designed and delivered STEM learning kits and delivered virtual lessons to young people in households served by Heal Charlotte. The No More Hotspots team focused on human trafficking of minors and learned that the state of North Carolina mandates schools to provide awareness instruction on human trafficking and sexual assault. The classroom content is not easily available or useful. Guided by an educator familiar with state education standards, the team developed an extensive human trafficking learning unit for high schools and a plan to present it to their local county board of education and the North Carolina Education Legislative Committee. Their bigger goal, a multidisciplinary unit available for use by high schools during Human Trafficking Awareness Month. It's been noted during the COVID-19 crisis that immigrants are at higher risk because many work in essential business service roles. Most official websites on COVID-19 protection measures are in English only, and protective face masks are not widely available to immigrant communities. The Helping Hands for Humanity team members from East Charlotte, the most diverse area of the city, were sensitive to the disparity. The team translated government COVID-19 postings into a multiple language website, recruited volunteers to sew protective masks and attach information about the website, collected donations to fund the effort, and partnered with local nonprofits serving refugees and immigrants to distribute the masks and information. These NewGen PeaceBuilders focus on what they care about, test their concerns with data, listen to community members, and become equipped to build bridges for the rest of their lives.
Well, I know we have questions, and so I'm going to whiz through these last few points. I'm going to go quickly through these last few points. So you heard mention at the beginning of the presentation that I have the pleasure of working with members of your Peace Committee to figure out how District 7030 can be the first district to lead this signature project for Zones 33, 34. And this signature project means doing training events that bring together Rotarians, Rotaractors, and civic leaders. There's that's the in our city's part. There's an education part that would really involve PeaceBuilder certifications for interactors, and there's a fabulous part that has to do with inserting books about peace in education and literacy efforts that Rotarians would typically be involved in. So that's the big picture, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more. One of the most wonderful things that I think can come out of all of this peace building and peace education work that you're doing and we can do together is, again, putting young people at the center. This photo was actually taken when NewGen PeaceBuilders alumni who were certified were called on by members of their city who were trying to work on a citywide initiative around unity and healing to actually teach the city leaders and the community how to use some of these principles of negative and positive peace and Galton's triangle and structural violence to address issues that they wanted to resolve in the city. And I find it doesn't matter where I go in the world. When I do this training in South Sudan, the students want to work on sexual assault, ethnic conflict, young people being involved in democracy, and education. Many of the issues are the same. It's the context that's different. Of course, one other point in delivering these wonderful experiences with young people, we are now relying on all new kinds of technology to do so that we can do what we're calling the hybrid approach, which would seem to be an approach that applies in District 7030. So it's how do you get a large number of students or civic leaders and Rotarians understanding the same concepts and working together virtually, but able to implement peace projects at the local level where they live and work together. So that is the process, the approach that we'll be using probably for about the next year and a half or 2 years. So technology is now very much at the center of much that we do. So before I open to questions and answers, I want to leave you with this one quote. I loved the quote that you used from Dr. King at the beginning of the presentation. Could we go on to the next quote, please? I loved the quote that you used from Dr. King. And by the way, there's a book that Dr. King's speeches. Dr. King gave 700 speeches, all, revolving around peace. And so if you can, everyone is a beauty and a beautiful construct in and of itself. But this one is from Jan Eliasson. He used to be the United Nations Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General. And what he always said so elegantly is, you can't have peace without development. You can't have peace, you can't have development without peace. You can't sustain it unless you're doing that while you're respecting human rights and the rule of law. And you have to be able to work on it all at the same time. When I listen to you and the way you're thinking about peace building, I can see, you know, that you're already there, but there's a new concept or principle or language that you could use. So because you're doing such a great job and because I've so enjoyed the presentation with you, and I'm going to open to Q&A, questions and answers in a moment, I'd like to give you a hand for all that you're doing in District 7030 and for inviting me here this evening. And Debbie, you'll have to give us a clue. How much time do we have for questions? I know we're getting right up at the hour.
We have at least 10 to 15 minutes. As a matter of fact, I have one question at the moment. So if you wanted to either take the question to say anything further, you have the time.
Do I have the time?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'm going to go into the questions, Patricia. Thank you. Question from Heather Tull. Have any tracer studies been conducted to determine where positive peace intervention had added value to or diffused the situation in a community? For example, a community like South Sudan.
Yeah. Well, so it's actually a very, very insightful question. And let's remember that the original language around positive peace came from Dr. Johann Galtung and his idea that we're trained to minimize violence, so negative peace, but our real goal should be creating conditions of well-being for all. And he would say that he could, while you couldn't measure it, the secret element of positive peace was empathy and compassion. And you could tell if a community operates from a place of empathy and compassion. Now, the way we talk about positive peace with Rotary and the relationship with the Institute for Economics and Peace is around the 8 pillars of peace. So well-functioning government, accepting the rights of others, equitable distribution of resources. I want to be really transparent and say the research that led to the 8 pillars shows that when those elements are present, a community generally is more resilient, has a number of indicators that reinforce ideas that are essential to peace. Democracy, less corruption, rule of law. But to be honest, there isn't a lot of evidence of people actually taking the 8 pillars and putting them to work and using them for peace projects that get a different result. So what's exciting about District 7030 and even Peter Kyle's signature Zones 33, 34 initiative is NewGen PeaceBuilders, and that peace education training will use the 8 pillars, and the students, the participants, the young people who are going through the training will practice using those pillars to create their peace projects. And when their peace projects have a difference, or enough peace projects altogether make a difference, you're actually demonstrating the impact of peace in action as seen through positive peace. Does that make sense? You know, you're sort of in the vanguard.
Thanks, Patricia. That's the only question I saw in the question box. And it leads me to conclude that you have done such an excellent presentation that you have covered all the answers, so that we really don't have any more questions forthcoming. Patricia, perhaps I can ask you one, and it is there a particular way you all measure the impact of peace projects, NewGen? What's the methodology that you use?
Yes, that's a very good question too. So one of the things that we have done in NewGen PeaceBuilders is adapt something called the Kirkpatrick model. The Kirkpatrick model has been around for 3 decades, and it is a way of measuring the impact of training. It's been used in large organizations for a long, long time, and it's a way of measuring, did knowledge about the concepts increase? Was there a shift in a belief system? Okay. And then there's actually a component where you measure whatever you've done in action. When we think about some of the peace projects, even that you saw, let me give you a good example. In that one video, you saw a team wanted to work on human trafficking. And there are many wonderful, projects, important projects going on around human trafficking. But what that team realized was that they actually live in a human trafficking hotspot, and they didn't know. So they live in a part of a city where there's a higher incidence of human trafficking than other parts of the city. They learned that there was actually legislation that said every high school student where they live is supposed to be getting education on human trafficking. So human trafficking and sexual assault awareness training in school. And then they said, wait, we haven't gotten that training. There are no presentations. There's nothing going on in our schools. That's legislation. We live in a hot spot, but there aren't any classes where we've gotten that information. So they worked with a master teacher, and they created a curriculum around human trafficking and have put it in front of their school board. They put it in front of the state legislature, and they're using it as part of a campaign for National Human Trafficking Awareness Month this coming January. So in answer to your question, we look at, did a project make sense? Did the project get done? And is it starting to be picked up so that others want to do what we call repeat the piece? If that education that is missing actually gets delivered repeatedly, I think we will have to say that was a very successful peace project.
Thanks, Patricia. I'd now like to call on our committee member, Brian. Brian, to move a vote of thanks, please. Brian, you're having problems being unmuted? Oh, okay. Okay. Fellow Rotarians, friends, on behalf of the District 7030 Peace Committee, I would like to express our sincere thanks to Patricia and her team from NewGen PeaceBuilders for sharing with us all this useful information this afternoon. I hope that everyone who has attended the session has taken back something that would perhaps increase their knowledge on peace and inspire them to be more peaceful and more active in peace. I know from looking at the chat that we have quite a few. I saw some of the interactors and Rotaractors present, and I'm hoping that they will be part of our project and our initiatives and moving forward with our intended peace plans in District 7030. So have a good evening, everyone. Thank you again for coming. Patricia, thank you for taking the time out, and hope to see everyone on the 21st of September when we celebrate United Nations World Peace Day with our featured speaker, Peter Kyle, at that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. It was a pleasure. Take care.